Unbeknownst to most folks, California Government Code Section 13075 provides that when authorized or when it's requested by the legislature in the Annual Budget Act, the Department of Finance may exercise control over the adoption of regulations. The legislature is prohibited from authorizing or requiring the Department of Finance to review and approve regulations adopted by state agencies, except those regulations adopted by the Department of Social Services, which add to the cost of any public assistance programs. And those regulations adopted by a state agency that would have the effect of increasing expenditures from the Healthcare Deposit Fund under the Medical Assistance Program. And here the Department of Finance must limit its review of a regulation under this section to basically making a determination whether sufficient funds are available to fund those additional program expenditures, which would be incurred if the regulation were actually adopted. In making the determination concerning the sufficiency of funds to meet the cost of the regulation, the director of the Department of Finance is actually required to consider the amount of the costs which would be added to the program or the increased expenditures from the Healthcare Deposit Fund for the fiscal year during which those costs or expenditures would actually be incurred. And the director of finance must also consider the effect that a change would have on the expenditure limitations established each year in the Budget Act, and the extent to which the particular regulation or regulations would constitute a deviation from the program requirements, as well as the assumptions and the estimates which were the basis for establishing the expenditure limitations in the State Budget Act. And the DOF is required to complete the review of any regulation that's subject to this section within 15 working days following its receipt by the DOF. And finally, if the DOF fails to act within that 15-day working day period, then the regulation is deemed approved by the DOF.